Hi there. How are you? Is it Tricilia? Oh, she's still connecting to audio. How you doing, Chris?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Good.
A lot of things going on, of course, but
Yes.
a lot of heavy lifting happening, but it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Just when
Did
you
you get
thought
my
the world couldn't
emails?
get any
I sent.
crazier.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
please.
what?
So just when you thought the world couldn't get any crazier, right?
Oh,
I
yeah,
know, really.
yeah. I was
Yeah.
I was talking about it
Yeah.
the other day. 2020 promised us a new vision. We're definitely seeing a lot of different things. It came as advertised.
Now, where did you hear that it was 2020 promised a new vision?
Just because 2020, when you think about eye vision,
Oh,
you
yeah,
think people would
2020.
make that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people were predicting in 2019 that 2020 was going to bring about clear vision, and it is showing. We're seeing a lot of things that are being revealed that may have necessarily not have been known, like in the previous year, like who people are when times are tumultuous, like people that step up, people that don't step up. Like it really shows who's who
Yes, it does.
during this time. So
Yes, it does. And I'll tell you, I was a child in the 60s. I wasn't one of the teenagers. I wasn't old enough to be part of the movement, of the 60s.
mhm,
But yet I was a child. So I was
you were there.
yeah, I went to high school. It was 1972. I'm giving away my age. So 1972. And but I remember those days very well. I remember the assassination of
President
President
King,
Kennedy. I remember
Kennedy.
being in school. Well, I was in a Catholic school too. So
Oh,
that
that
was
was
a big deal
63.
to the nuns, I mean, that was like they came in and everybody was upset. So I remember that, and I remember Martin Luther King and his assassination. I remember Malcolm X. I grew up during the Cold War. I grew up during all of that. So that energy and that movement, people coming together to take a stand, even though I was a child, I always believed in that. I always believed in, the Dalai Lama and Mahatma Gandhi is one of my heroes. I'm a believer in peaceful protest. And I get upset when people don't want any protest at all. And I'm like, the day you
Yeah,
take that away from Americans is the day that you become, an anarchy, a
yeah,
dictatorship or whatever. I mean, we need that right. And I just feel that to the core of my being.
it is true.
And there was a period of time, and I'm giving a little, this is off the cuff here, but I just feel like I need to say this because of how this is all affecting me. Let me make Jeff the co host. There was a period of time where I was teaching, still teaching school full time, and it would have been about, if my children are probably 25 years ago, where as I was doing my work, and I want to send you this book, Chris,
Thank you
for
for the
what you're doing.
resources, by the way. Thank you so much. I did
You're
respond.
welcome.
I sent you an email response.
Okay,
That
I
was
haven't been
good.
emailed. Yeah, so I want to send you this book. This was my first book, and I wish I knew more about marketing when I wrote it because um, it was the title. If I would title it something totally different today, it's called "Free the Children: Conflict Education for Strong, Peaceful Minds." And when I was doing this work around that time, like the mid '90s, what was also happening was a lot of your free thinkers at universities were either retiring or being pushed out. And a lot of the universities were becoming very, I don't know how to say, vanilla, very much like, you just toe the line. Liberal arts education was being devalued. Philosophy, psychology, all those courses to teach us how to be human were, being replaced with math and science. And I understand that. But even when my daughter went to college, she went to an engineering college. She did take one course that had some philosophy in it. But as much as when I was in college, I didn't I didn't appreciate having to read Nietzsche and all these people until I read them. They're assigned and you read them and you go, oh, wow, this really is interesting. But who picks up Nietzsche and just decides to read it? So I felt like there was a huge loss, a loss of a lot of wisdom, a lot of people who taught from questioning standpoint as opposed to teaching from a book and everybody, let's be PC standpoint. I'm not against PC, but what happened was we became so much afraid and we did, to really challenge the status quo and to challenge the thinking that was going on in the world. And I felt there was a tremendous loss there because we don't want to be sheep. We just don't want to be sheep. And I was worried that was happening to our young adults at that time. And so those adults probably would be in their 40s right now, in their 40-ish range, during the time where I saw so much of the university thought process, the thinking, the questioning, the philosophy, all that was kind of disappearing in the name of we really need to get jobs and everything needs to be about math and science, which I'm also approve of. I'm not against that, but I think we need it all. And so now seeing this in a way is hopeful to me because now we've got youth activating to make a difference, to go for equality, to really challenge and question some of our biases. And I actually think this is a really wonderful thing that's happening right now. There's some bad parts to it, but sometimes things have to get a little ugly to come out ahead and be on the right side of things. We have to challenge our thinking, and it's always painful. There's no growth without pain. That's why sometimes working out is a pain. Getting up right now, the only way I can train, and the only way I'm willing to train, is to train outside. I'm not going into any building at my stage of life, and just I can't afford to get sick. So I am getting up early in the morning, and I'm not an early morning person, and I'm going to the gym, working outside with my trainer, and we're keeping the distance. I'm the only one with them outside, and then I come home, and it's huge, that was the only time he could fit me in the morning. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. That means I'm up at 5:30, and oh my gosh, it's painful. But
that's the best time to burn calories, though, in the morning.
Is it? Yeah.
So, rest.
Yeah, and it's making me go to bed a little earlier, and that's all good, but it's painful. But on the other hand, I want to be fit. And one of the inspirations I had this past week was as I'm leaving the gym, a woman was coming up. She looked like she was maybe in her 70s, early 70s. She's beautiful, and she was training after me outside. I found out afterwards she's 82. Like 82, and I'm like, okay, it's worth it. If I could be looking that good at 82, if I can be strong, that's awesome. So, yeah, that's my little, I'll get off my soapbox. But I really feel that it's time, a 2020 vision. It's time for us to look at ourselves again and look at what we're doing to everything. As I say to people, it's almost as if the universe, God, whatever you believe, said to the whole world, go to your room and think about this for a while. What are you doing? Go to your room.
Politics, like you hit it right on the head. Politics is just something that is too important to be left to the politicians.
Yeah.
That quote is in many books of wisdom. Like we just have to make a voice and take a stand in things that we don't agree with. Because if we do, we're just saying that, okay, it's acceptable. And when we go back to complain about it, we're not able to do that. We don't have the right to do that if we're not active. And you also remind me of a quote by Frederick Douglass, without struggle, there cannot be growth. Like you have to be able to, I'm sure you're familiar with that quote. Mm-hmm. So that just reminded me of that. Like if we can reach into our past, it will help us guide into the future and stop making the same mistakes. Mm-hmm. Like I was telling you like the other day, it is important, of course, that I don't know if everybody else on the panel knows that I'm pushing to, and I'm leading the charge to make race relations a standard in our school system. I'm going to start it out in Chicago, and I'm going to plant the seed, I have some professionals in Florida that are going to help me write the curriculum, and also some colleagues that I am working with to start kids out young to teach
Yeah.
them about race relations, things that they would not necessarily know about other individuals that don't necessarily look or act or think or talk like they do,
Mm-hmm.
to understand the different cultures before they are thrown out there into the world and have to go and witness what we call culture shock when they have to work alongside, go to school alongside these other individuals that don't necessarily agree with the same things that they agree with. But and we're going to start out by talking about the origin of race and where it began, because once upon a time we were all in the same area, um, look the same, act the same, talk the same, and then we migrated to other places. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is our quest to go back to the beginning, and hopefully at the end of it, and our whole big pitch on this is that we want to get you to where we started out. We want to end where we started. We need to get back to where we were when we were all one people.
Yep.
So,
I
but there's a
agree.
lot of things we got to sift through. It's a heavy lift. And gosh, as I go through all the resources, like there's a lot of stuff that's out there, and it is just mind blowing that, you know, someone has not decided to go ahead and just really make a strong push to just make race relations a standard. Like that's going to be good for all mankind.
It absolutely is. And from what I'm reading, there's been a lot of push to try to do those types of things, but the key people maybe weren't ready to listen. Um, it's tough. It's we I think we're at a point now, and I think our youth and our young people who grew up with more diversity in the classrooms, more diversities, whether it was intellectually or ethnicity, they're ready to take this on, and
Yes,
that's very hopeful to me. It really is.
it is beautiful to see children of all races protesting. When in the
Hmm.
past, you wouldn't see much diversity.
No.
In the 60s protests, you didn't see that much. You saw black and white, but you didn't really see much of anything else. And it was majority of African Americans. So it is, yeah, I agree with you, Susan. This new generation has what it takes to save us all from ourselves.
I hope so.
And
I
I think
hope
it's up to
so.
us to point them in the right direction. So if we could put this race relations thing in the curriculum and start planting the seeds to kiddies when they are young, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I
This,
think
Yeah.
it's something that's definitely learned because I remember to date myself, I was in fifth grade when they desegregated the schools. And so I was in, of course, a white school, and we had, the black kids coming to us, and I was so excited that I look at all these new friends I'm going to have. I mean, I was just so extremely excited, and they were coming to my school, and then the next year I had to go to one of the black schools because it was ones that the black kids went to. I was appalled. I was so angry, not at the kids. I was so angry because my school was so nice. I mean, we had air conditioning. We had the lunches were amazing. We went to this other school now that was a predominantly black school. It was a black school, and it was like two different dimensions. And that's when my eyes were really opened. And I'm thinking, my gosh, why is that? How can that even be fair?
yeah,
As a sixth, because I was in sixth grade when I saw that, so I've always loved, we adopted three Mexicans. When I was a little girl, I wanted to adopt somebody else of another race, another color or something, and we ended up adopting three Mexicans. And every time I see somebody, and if they have an accent, where are you from? I have to know all this because I love it. I just love nationalities. I love, the diversity. And so, of course, now I know back in Florida, there's a lot of diversity in the schools down here, but I was living in Ohio a year ago and there's just no diversity. I mean, everything's predominantly white. My Mexican kids were the only Mexican kids in the school for a while, so, You know, there are a lot of people that have never been exposed. So, you know, a lot of people are just afraid because they've never had that exposure because they've never been taught, you know?
That is so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful that you reminisce on when you were innocent and how many other kids like get excited to meet new friends.
Mm-hmm.
Kids learn racism like through, or they learn about race. I shouldn't even say racism, just relations with other races through three avenues, either home, environment, or school.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we, right now, we're just leaving it up to home and environment. And unfortunately, kids are getting the wrong message. And we have an opportunity at school to use our platform to really push the message out and teach kids just race relations the right way, if we can. So it's exciting. And wow, like my heart just beats when you talk about like how you were excited to just make new friends. And because that's what kids do when they're innocent until they're poisoned by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a pity. But yeah, that makes my heart like glow a little bit.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just love people. I love people anyway. I don't care. I love everybody, and I want to know everything about everybody. And you know, what do you do different than me? And you know, I might like to do that. You know what I mean?
It's a
Yeah.
gift.
Learn from each other. You've got to learn. You've got to, you know. And if sometimes you're not going to agree on something, and sometimes you have to just agree to disagree.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's where a lot of people don't know that you can agree to disagree.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So we have someone that's called Owner. Do you know? You're wearing red and yellow. Are you aware that your name is Owner? I can't hear you. Let me unmute you. I got to make myself a co-host. My backup person is got to be the co-host.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. I don't know why
There
I don't
you
have a
are.
name. Okay. My name is Kay. I
Hi,
teach.
Kay.
I was with you in March, right before all this in West Orange, when you taught with the Bureau
of Education and
Yep.
Research.
Yep. We had a class
Was it the
then.
paraprofessional train the trainer, or was it another one?
It was another one. It was
Co-teaching.
co-teaching.
Yep. Because
Yeah.
Chris here, who was just talking about the race issue, he was in the paraprofessional training that week. Those are the last 2 weeks I did before everything kind of shut down.
Yes.
I'll put my hands and hit my mic here. Yeah.
All of us the same. I'm muted again. How do I get to stop muting? Mute my audio. It says mute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Yeah.
You're not
it
muted.
it says mute. Okay. So
You're not.
I just wanted to add something because I agree with what you're saying, Chris, but I also think that I don't know how to handle creating some kind of school-based curriculum. I teach in Ewing Township, which is right on the outskirts of Trenton. And so 75% of our student body is non-white, but probably 90% of the teaching staff is white. So we have an interesting dynamic to begin with, but these kids have all grown up with each other, and there are a lot more non-black kids in the elementary schools. They just, as they get to high school, move on to private schools. But in any case, I was amazed to watch these kids who had grown up with each other, how, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say colorblind they were. I mean, they so could understand each other, everything. They could understand their lives at home. They could understand their feelings. And it was so wonderful to see kids of all different colors and backgrounds and even religions, because they had not known anything different, grow up in that environment. And it's just really, really beautiful. But converse that with what Dina had said. I grew up in a very lily white town. I mean, it was a long time ago. It's not quite as white as it was before, but it was. And I went to a church that happened to be all white. And the scary, exciting educational fact was that we went to Patterson to do some community service for church. And I still remember now inside of me the feeling of going to some place where I was the different one. I was the person who was, I don't know, out of their comfort zone. And I get goosebumps because it was scary, but it was also exhilarating. Because when you're with people that are all the same all the time, you get kind of a limited viewpoint.
Yes.
And when you get to see that there are other people who live differently, who think differently, who talk differently, eat, and all that kind of stuff differently, it was enlightening. And I'm not sure if we can actually, I mean, some of that we can emulate in school to some degree, but you may not have that demographics to be able to create that kind of environment. But there must be some kind of other ways that we can help children keep that open-mindedness. Like you were saying, Chris, that, I mean, kids are born that way anyway. They're just curious. They don't label things other than, you know, you're wearing a blue shirt, you're wearing a red shirt. They don't like pick you as different, you know. So I'm excited and curious, and I'm hoping that this is a moment of change as well.
Yes. So my market, if you will, is in Chicago. So I'm a special ed administrator with the Chicago Public Schools. So I'm responsible for 22 schools for special education in Network 9. So we have a ton of diversity. So I already am in talks with a principal at one of the schools within my area. And we're going to put it together and we're going to pilot it in her school. And then we're hoping that this is going to catch fire and we'll be able to spread this thing out and just be able to use the data to speak on the success of the curriculum once we put it out there. So we're in the, of course, the infant stages of it, but it's something that probably should have been done centuries ago. And so we're going to put it out there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a wonderful thing. Tricilia, can you hear me? And I don't even know if I'm saying your name correctly. And Mary McConnell.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm here.
There you are. Yay. I love the faces because now I can see you and see your emotions and your smile. You've got a beautiful smile.
Yes, you said it correctly. I've just been kind of listening in. And I was really kind of geared up for a different purpose during this webinar today, but I am.
That's the way this happens.
I am pleased to hear the direction, and I think when you kind of got started, I didn't, I was just kind of feeling the camaraderie in the room, and it's not just empty words, so that's appreciative. On yesterday, I'm from Montgomery, and I haven't had an opportunity to participate in workshops, in your workshops recently, but I continue to follow you and use all of your material.
Thank you.
Which is great, but I think the gear that you switched to today is important for the times that we're in, because we do have to continue to address racial relations in our world, not just in our country or in the state or here in Montgomery. Yesterday, I had opportunity to just kind of reflect on a peaceful demonstration that was organized by the youth of Montgomery. And I know that across the South, in several states, that we have had protests that have become violent, but these children were focused on having a demonstration where it was peaceful and that their voices for what their goal was heard, which, that was important to them. And because it was so important to them, it became important to the city, and they were able to engage with the mayor. And then we have our first Black mayor, which, that doesn't negate the position for why he is engaged. He is trying to reach all of the people here in Montgomery. And the group was multi-ethnic. It wasn't just, Black kids, but it was all of these kids, recent graduates, students who are still in high school, college students, which brought out some of the older people because they wanted to be a part of something that was so great. And they are continuing to organize different activities throughout the summer to engage in conversation on making the situation better, not just for one group of people, but for all of us.
Right. Good. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And as far as topics, I believe this is your first time here. Is it your first time in this meeting, Tricilia?
It is. It is.
And I think you've signed up before. I've seen your name. Your name is not one to forget. I think maybe you've signed up and been on the list before, but weren't able to make it. It's my memory.
Well, we engage more through Twitter.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
I know your name.
Yeah, and I think you've used a few of my quotes in some of your books from the material that we've had. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, the way this works on Thursdays is people fill out what they are looking for, and so I got what right here in front of me. I have it pulled up what each person who's here today came for, but really I'm not presenting anything. If somebody asks, I can pull up resources in a PowerPoint, but for the most part, it's led by all of us. This is it's about connecting and about dealing with whatever we need to deal with or ask questions any way we need to. And right now, the race issue is a big one, and it impacts our students. Whether we're still running classes or not, this is a very big thing for our students to deal with and to learn from. So this is very relevant to what we're talking about, especially when you consider if this were any other.
Susan, you froze up. Hopefully she comes back on one of these platforms in just a second.
It is.
Doesn't matter how much you prepare, sometimes you're still going to have technical difficulties.
Yeah. During our station identification break, hey, Treselia, congratulations on having a black mayor in Montgomery, Alabama.
That is significant.
Wow.
Yeah, it is significant for Montgomery. It really is. One of my coworkers has joined me. She's masked up. I'm in my office. I have an air sanitizer going.
Hello.
Hi.
I called her.
There she is. There she is.
The conversation got started.
Unmute
She
you.
was interested in it anyway, but when I started hearing the conversation, I invited her to come in and just kind of listen in as well.
Okay. Great.
Be on the phone?
There you are. Okay. Had to get the right number or the right button.
Okay. Oh, you couldn't hear me.
No, you were muted, and I was trying to unmute you, but it kept nothing. It's just a mouse thing.
I think I made you host, Jeffrey, before I decided to leave the other meeting so I could reboot. You know what I think happened is I was trying to stream live into our Facebook group, and it's been running, but I think it was too much for the computer. Every time I've tried to do that, it hasn't worked. So I will get back on the other one, but you guys continue the conversation, and I will be back. But I've got to mute this, or else there'll be all this feedback.
Okay.
Myself, you guys keep on.
Okay. Are you still there, Treselia?
Yes, I'm still here.
Her eyeballs here.
All right, you were talking about your.
Well, I turned it so my coworker could see. Listen. We're trying to maintain our 6 feet, so I can't put my mask on because
one has a mask on. I think we're safe.
because it has a shield on it. I'm sorry.
If one person has a mask on, I think you're good to go.
Yeah, mine has a shield on it that I'm not supposed to have on my mask. So
Yeah, if one person has a mask on, there's no way you can pass.
A shield on it?
yeah. No, don't worry. You can show the shield. I can't. I can.
All of my masks are really weird. So
yeah, it's it's 90, I think 96% liquids or passing on, like in order to pass a virus, it has to be person to person, like
right.
fluids, and 6% through touching.
Right, but the thing with us is we both have really bad allergies. We're here in Alabama where everything blooms all the time.
Oh yes, you're sniffing and sneezing and dripping. Yes,
right.
Yes, the same in New Jersey. Yeah.
Everything's in the air, and the air is dirty. I got you. But the air is just so contaminated with everything. And so yeah, I get it. So you got to be really careful. I don't know. Illinois is really up there as far as the COVID-19 cases. Mm-hmm. It's really high in Illinois. I think New York is number one, right? And New Jersey is right there with them.
Yeah, they're getting down. They're going down, which is nice. Things
Oh,
are starting to loosen up down here. Yeah, it's strictly primarily in nursing home populations and high risk groups of certain. It's not spread as frequently as it is now. So our restrictions are starting to ease up a little bit, which is nice.
oh, okay.
So our young folks in Brooklyn are out in force protesting, and in New Jersey too. Not so much in the suburbs, but more laid back. But in the cities, definitely.
Yeah. Is anyone afraid there's going to be a spike in cases just due to the fact that?
Yeah, a
And
lot
we
of people.
actually haven't seen
A lot
a
of people in
decline
New York
here
are
yet,
afraid of
so.
that, but they don't care.
Yeah,
They're like this is more important.
that's good. See, yeah, the young people are going to save us from ourselves.
They are. That's what I tell my kids all the time. I have a son who's 26 and lives in Brooklyn. I've told him this ever since he was young. I was like, you guys, you are going to fix it. You're going to fix what we all screwed up. What we all thought was important is not important. If things are going to work, it's going to be you guys.
Yes.
And you see it in their generation more than you have in previous generations. They are the most I don't know. I can't even think of a way to say this, but they are the most blind to race and color and background than any generation prior. They don't carry prejudice as much, I think, as my generation and those before. I see my son and his friends. They're from all over, and it doesn't matter. It's kind of, they look beyond. They look for the things that they find important, like integrity, character, kindness. Bigger things that we all kind of thought that we all should have, but then when push came to shove, it was like, well, dog eat dog, and we all have to nose to the grindstone and all those kind of stuff. And oh, sorry, well, if I can't be nice to you today, that's all right, maybe tomorrow if I have time. So the kids today are realizing that that's what's important, is being that person of integrity all the time, walking the talk, which is awesome and so exciting.
Yep, they're free thinkers, I think, is the which is great. Like they have the ability to not necessarily take what we say as gospel. Because there have been so many bad examples in our generation, that have kind of skewed their thinking about like how they feel about us.
Yes.
And there are only a few of us that they're going to actually listen to and follow.
Yes.
And you think about, just our leadership and people who are supposed to be in positions where they are supposed to be role models, and they're dropping the torch on that.
Yes.
And our kids are looking at that, and it's like, well, we can do better than what you guys are doing. So, and they are, and like you said, they are carrying the torch. And Priscilla, your youth in Montgomery is really looking really diverse, and they're taking the bull by the horns, and they're going out there and doing it the right way. I talked to my team, I think the day before yesterday, about just like some of the things that's happening in Chicago with the destruction of property and businesses, and just like misdirected anger, and not really doing things the right way, the way Dr. King would have envisioned us to do it. Mm-hmm. And I kind of gave our team a breakdown, because it's mostly predominantly white. We have an Asian in our team. So Chicago Public Schools is broke up into like 15 different networks. They're like mini districts, if you will, because it's so big. We have close to 700 schools. And so I'm the network administrator for Network 9. So, and then there are others, but I told them that here you have a group of people who were like brought to a country by force, and then they were freed. And then a little bit of 100 years later, they were led by a wonderful individual who taught them how to gain their rights in a peaceful way, Dr. King. Mm-hmm. And everybody was really feeling good about the way, things were going. Mm-hmm. We were going to really see some justice now, and some things were going to go our way finally. And then an assassin's bullet took that away. And so there was a lot of rage that occurred as a result of that. And my father tells me a lot of stories about how Chicago was in 1968 when that happened, and how businesses were just destroyed. People were angry
Yep.
They were not thinking straight. And when you go through that whole grief thing, the first thing is that shock, and then that anger, and then that depression, and blah, blah, blah. And then you finally accept it. But I don't think that we've ever as a people have accepted it.
Yeah.
But we've learned to just understand that this is the way it is. And then half a century later, fast forward the film, we're in 2020 right now. We're thinking like things are kind of going in a good direction. People get it. We still have some murders, Trayvon Martin and others. And there are also people not of color who were victims of police brutality too. So, and then a lot of people who are not of color kind of get disenfranchised with the whole Black Lives Matters thing. And because like I had a guy that I work with say that, I'm being inconvenienced by all of these media interruptions, and, I'm trying to watch my program and they're talking about Black Lives Matter. I had a buddy who was white and who was brutalized by cops. And I was like, that's more the reason why you should be a part of this movement, because these are crimes against humanity. So when cops do that against an African American, it's not just against him, it's giving them a green light to do it against anyone.
Oh yeah.
And so these are crimes against humanity, and we should all band together to end this like once and for all. It's just unfortunate that African Americans represent a high proportionate number of those incidents, but that's really the only real difference in this whole thing. And our kids get it, which is why they're out there and they're marching. And so back to like 2020, we thought that we were making some ground, and then publicly somebody videotapes an individual being choked out. Like if you lay on somebody's neck for 8 minutes, it's like, what do you expect is going to happen?
Right.
And so it's sad, and it's a pity, and it's a crime against humanity that I am so glad that I was shocked by the outpour.
Oh, I'm not. No.
Just because of the African American experience and what we've like dealt with in the past, and like people kind of just like say, okay, like we're gonna just like we'll say a few words and then we'll move on.
Right. You think it's like a Rodney King soundbite, but I think having lived through this multiple times, that this is not that. This is something which sounds marvelous that they're.
Oh, sure no.
Okay, you muted yourself.
Yeah, you were on mute.
She's still on mute.
You're still muted, Kay.
I clicked it already. You are muted. Press this.
Yeah,
You're good. You're good now. You're good
Okay,
now.
it keeps popping back up again. Okay. I think this is different in that it's not a soundbite. Like Rodney King, for instance. It was a 24-hour news cycle. I mean, it was a couple of days, but it was geographically, pretty much in LA, some minor riots throughout the country, but that was it. It was quelched, and then, business is normal. But I think because we are fortunate enough, or whatever you want to call it, that we're at the same time we're suffering for some other debilitating events in our country in general, that people are in a different headspace. You've got more time to not rush around and worry about making your dollar and keeping up with the Joneses. You've got time to reflect.
Exactly.
You've got time to embrace this and see it for what it is. And so you're getting more people involved, and it's spreading everywhere. So I'm thinking that this is the, I don't know whether it's capstone, keystone moment that this agenda's got to get put through. Right. It's time for that tough look that we have to make, that introspective look, and say, hey, look, it's now or never. We've screwed it up big time before, and if we don't address not only the police brutality, but the systemic oppression, both emotionally but economically, of people of color and non-white folks, I don't think that we're ever going to go back to the way we were. I don't think there's ever going to be I don't think this is going to run its time limit and then we're going to go to something else. I don't think people will let it happen now.
Right. And I think what had happened was, over the course of the years, we had kind of become desensitized to it.
Yeah.
It happens, and then we're like, oh my gosh, it happened. We kind of have a little shock factor to it,
Mhm.
and then we move on.
Yeah.
But because things have become so egregious and people are not being punished, while we're in this state of, stay at home, people do have the time to
Yep.
do more research. They have more time to watch the news and see things that are happening, and at some point you have to become affected. It's not, if you are human, it has to touch you in some type of way to want a change. And if you're a parent, as I am, you have to want you have to want change for your children, because you don't want them to live in a society where they are afraid.
Yeah.
None of them.
Yeah.
So I think that what has happened over the last few months, because Aubrey was actually in February, we found out more about it in May.
Yeah.
Because of that, we've had it has touched us. And then when this last individual was calling for his mom, and I think that's the part that, every time I see the news flash, and I'm reminded as a mother that he was crying out but wasn't being heard. It touches us, it impacts us, and it calls us to make a change for our society.
Yeah.
It was a call to action, and we can't just sit back and let this go by. We've got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't look at it that way, Kay. Thanks for sharing that perspective, and I didn't think about, like, I think that this intersection with the COVID-19 pandemic and this police injustice, having them intersect at the same time, at the same point in time in history, I think there's something divine going on.
I agree.
This is a divine intervention that's way bigger than us. And if we don't get the message, like, we'll never get the message.
Yep, agreed.
And I agree with you, Kay, like, and Trisilla, like, we will never be the same. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that, like, moving forward, like, these events are a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's up to us as human beings to take this and make something good out of it. I mean, geez, there's enough bad that's going on as a result of all of this. Why not, like, take a gamble or two and try to make something good out of it and see what happens? So
Open up conversation. We need to start a dialogue, and we need to start talking with others and understanding their perspective and what they're going through. Hold on, my battery's slow.
Yep, but I agree that and when I present this to stakeholders, I am going to offer your perspective, Kay, as to, like, this whole pandemic actually gives people an opportunity to just slow the tape down, like, slow their lives down, and really, like, you're not rushing now. So now you have the ability to put things in perspective, and you have no excuse to take action now because you have nothing but time on your hands.
Yeah.
Like with the unemployment rate at an all-time world high. So it's now or never.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
What amazed me is that there's been protests all over the world supporting this action. I mean, who would have thought that? I don't know that that's happened in recent decades, where the whole world has protested this injustice here in this country.
The world has time on their hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also,
it's kind of awesome.
Maybe it hits too close to home for them. Maybe they particularly don't have a situation like that at that moment, but perhaps it's a sign of a little bit of guilt. Maybe there's some work that they need to do too, as a country and as a group of people, and that maybe this is their time to say, hey, look, we agree that we have problems like this in our country too. Let's, get moving.
Come together.
Yeah. Race is an issue in different forms in many places. Probably everywhere in the world. There's, depending on what it is, every place has their injustices towards people they consider less than. And it's time to think about that and change it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Mary, we haven't heard from Mary McConnell. I just want you to know, Mary, we see you, or we see your name. I don't know if you can hear us.
Okay, I'm unmuting, but I am not in a position to be visible for everybody to see. But
Okay.
the discussion and conversation has been great, and it's just I agree that with both of these incidents, crisis, pandemic, and with the protests, that there's some kind of link or some kind of connection going on, and it's just brought an awareness to everybody, and everybody is being affected in some way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, as far as from an educator's point of view, how are we as educators going to address this? Because this is something that definitely needs to be addressed with students, with teachers, educators. Again, someone mentioned about talking, dialogue, starting with conversation, discussion around biases, even going back 400 years, because this is something that has been embedded in our American culture for
Mm-hmm.
400 years. Institutional racism, injustice, in all areas, education, health, business, just in all areas of life. But again, we have to, find ways to have the conversation, but move beyond the conversation.
That's
And
right.
find ways to embed, in what we do and all.
That's
But
right.
it's a great opportunity. This is 2020 vision. So we are seeing things clear. The vision is getting clear. And so we need to reflect and act on, what we know needs to occur, that we need to do.
I'm not sure when you got on, Mary, but I'm with the Chicago Public Schools, and I'm leading the charge to make race relations a standard in American education. So I want to plant the seed. So when you pull up the Common Core standards, you will see race relations. I feel like if we plant the seeds early in children, that they will take the information and be able to grow. This generation of kids are ready to receive that. And I think that they're in a position to take history and make sure that and guarantee that we're never going to repeat it again, as to per se save ourselves from ourselves.
Right.
And then also, I think with African American males, boys, that we need to do a better job in the educational system in working with our males at an early age. We know when they start kindergarten, they come in energetic, lively, eager to learn, and things sort of shift and change. So that's an area too that we need to revisit and work on improving educational outcomes for our African American students.
Right.
Male.
Mary, where are you located?
I'm in Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Okay.
Mhm.
A big city.
Yeah.
Being an African American male growing up in the Chicago public school system, I have to say that I'm in full agreement with you, Mary. When I was able to go to college, so I went to college to play football, and so I'm dropped off, in this unknown in Iowa City, and it was a culture shock for me. It would have been nice if in school, like someone would have told me, like, these are different cultures that you're going to have to deal with. These are some do's and don'ts, like when you go off into college. So it was really in college, it was really a baptism by fire. And then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like, how many African American males actually go to college or get a chance to experience higher learning? So they'll never get these lessons. like on how to interact with other races, and how many other kids of other races wish that they would have more knowledge about children in other races and their cultures and their customs. So I just thought it would be something that we could offer to just make this world a better place. Mm-hmm. And I think we can use our classrooms as a platform to push that.
Yeah. Yeah. And being someone who's been in classrooms all over the country, it's definitely needed. And maybe in some places, in some schools, we will be able to be more honest about the past and the lessons from the past than maybe the politics want people to be in schools right now in some places. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she is someone who goes around the country as an educator. She works at the university level. She has her doctorate, and she was a young woman during at the time of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. And we were talking today, and she reminded me that, you know, there's some craziness in the world about what we want to believe about our past. And she does this act. She's an actress and a singer and an educator, and she becomes Harriet Tubman. And a school district, she did not tell me where, asked her to come and do her educational piece on Harriet Tubman, but not use the word slave. We want you to come, but we don't want you to use that word. And it's that, to me, it was like the epitome of, you know, the wrong that we're doing in some places, in some cases, with not being honest about our past. Because if we're not honest about our past and honest about what's happening, we can't change it. It reminds me of when I first started doing bullying prevention training. I would literally ask the students, especially at middle school level, high school level, you know, what names are you calling each other? And I had a whole process that I went through. You know, what do you call a girl who doesn't act like a lady? What do you call a boy who doesn't act like a man? And the kids would be honest, and they'd say the language that they were using in the halls, and some of it we would call swear words or not nice. But then we would deal with it. We would say, okay, this is the language you're using. How does that feel? What does that look like? You know, what are we'd discuss it. And I had educators that loved it, and I had educators like, oh no, you can't let them talk about that. I'm like, they're talking about it in the hallways. They're calling each other these things in the hallways. You want to sweep it under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist? I stopped doing that work because it got to the point where when they'd call me, I never knew what would happen in the long run. Like if I went into their school and didn't warn them, and I'd say, you know, I just want you to know, if you'd like me to come into your school and do this presentation, this is what's going to happen. Make sure that even though you want this, make sure your colleagues are going to be okay with it. And that's when my work stopped, because they would inevitably come back and say, no, we got people in the building who don't want that to be out in the open. And you know, when you don't have things out in the open, honestly, so you can discuss them, you cannot learn from them, and you cannot change them. You cannot address it. And no matter what it is, you just can't, you know? It's like, let's pretend there isn't an elephant in the room.
Yeah, but people don't know, they fear. I mean, a lot of people are afraid of things. You know, there's a lot of white people that are afraid of black people. There's a lot of black people who are afraid of white people and Hispanics and so forth, because they don't know anything about them. And what you don't know and you don't understand, you fear.
Right.
If you don't have a conversation and dialogue and say, hey, why shouldn't you? I just recently found out that one of my sons, he's Mexican, everybody called him the Mexican when he was in high school. Now, he wore it like a badge of honor back then. Oh, I'm the Mexican. But now that he's, you know, gotten older and he's looking back, he feels like it was all racism. That they were, you know, well, maybe their motives weren't what it was, you know. So there was never that dialogue. Well, why are you calling me the Mexican? Is that okay? How are you meaning it? Because there was years later, we're talking, he graduated in 2008. And years later, now he's saying there was so much racism going on there, you know. but he never said anything about it at the time because wasn't even sure what it was.
Right.
But there was no conversation.
It was definitely racism. Like, and that's the thing, because we are so unaware of when we're being disrespected or being disrespectful to one another, that as a result, like, we end up being lost. Our kids are lost. They're waiting for direction and instruction, and it's never coming. Like, or if it's coming from the wrong people. And they're getting all of this information, and they're living in an information age where information is coming from everywhere. And so they don't know what to accept and what to throw out.
True. Yeah, that's another point. And one of the things that I've always been an advocate for is helping students know how to digest and research and understand media, because they're inundated with it today. And it's like, how do you know who's telling the truth? So we have to teach our kids to be critical thinkers and not the standards form of, but really think about it. All right, this was said here in this station, in this newscaster you're watching. This was said here. Both of them are newscasters. Which one is correct? Is it opinion? Is it? And that discussion should be part of every curriculum from first grade on, or even kindergarten on. Mm-hmm. It's because if not, and even on the internet, what you see on the internet, what's true and what's not. If kids don't know that now, it's going to only get worse, especially as technology becomes better and better. The deep fakes are what really kind of scare me, that you're going to get to a point where you're going to see a video, somebody's voice, and their mouth moving and saying things that they never said because they can fake the video that well.
Oh, politics.
That's coming. That's coming, yeah, right? It's not really in the mainstream now. It's been done, and it's been used against people, and mostly celebrities. But eventually, it will become, everybody will have it on that software on their computer. It's going to come.
And I think I think just as importantly is we have to educate our students and children regarding video bloggers and bloggers, what of that information is fact and not just their opinion, because our kids go off of what is viral, what is everyone else listening to, what are my peers believing. So we have to, gear them towards the way of making sure they are researching for themselves as well, and not just going along with what everyone else is doing, which is probably how we got to the point in some of the cities of the violent acts of protest, as opposed to having children who wanted to truly impact change and not just get something for themselves for the moment.
Right. Well, some of the violence, from my understanding, is also outside agitators, and their motives may not be in line with the motives of the movement. There are people coming in to cause trouble for their own alternate reasons. Yeah, which is really sad.
We call those people opportunists.
Yeah,
our mayor calls them that. Mayor Lightfoot is calling them opportunists who have an ulterior motive. They come to destroy. They come to loot. They don't have anything at home. They're struggling. So this is a perfect opportunity for the thief to go and break into businesses and mask it as a protest.
Right.
The motive is for self-gain.
Or also to sabotage the real reason for the protest by causing negative energy and attention. So
that's right.
But the other thing I think that is so important for all kids that seems to be lacking, well, it of course, we live in a much more complex world, but are viable, important role models, people of integrity and vision and strength. You think about Dr. King, but there's when I work in high school, and we ask questions like this just in general in conversation, and there's usually the sports figures and things like that, or people that you want to grow up like, you want to be like this person or whatever, and it's because of fame or because of monetary gain, and there's no real ready replacement or people that one can talk about and say, hey, this person is doing these great things for his community or her community or whatever it might be, and have those people be the ones that we teach students about, not so that they can say, well, when I grow up, I want to be like that person rather than this athlete or this other person who may just be objectified because they're successful and they're a celebrity, not necessarily because they've done something positive for their community.
And we need to find those role models, and we need to raise them up. We need to raise those role models up and talk about them in school and share them. I mean, when I was a kid, we had them because we had those people. You know, I don't know, honestly, I hate to say that, I don't know exactly when Mahatma Gandhi and that legacy, I don't know when he passed away. I don't know the year, but I know of him from the time that I was a small child. And, you know, the Mahatma Gandhis, the Mother Teresa, the Dr. Martin Luther King. I mean, Malcolm X had a different approach, but he still had a message to change. And those were discussed in school. I mean, this was part of what we talked about, and now we're so focused on standards and curriculum. Teachers don't even have the time to divert into these discussions. I remember when I was teaching high school, our principal would encourage us to take teachable moments and talk about them. No, don't go veer off the curriculum completely, but use those teachable moments. And in the past 20 years, we've become so rigid in what we can put forth in the classroom. There's no time to have these discussions. There's also very little time for teachers to tend to students' emotional needs. I mean, when I was a young teacher, I could stop my lesson and I could have a discussion about an emotional, maybe put downs that were happening in the classroom, bullying that was happening, or injustice that was happening, and we could have a conversation. And now teachers don't feel they have the time to address that. So when are students getting that social emotional learning? You know, and there's this trend now, well, we need to come in and, you know, teach them a lesson and like make it part of the curriculum, and it'll be a 45-minute lesson every day when they're a freshman. I mean, it's not enough. It needs to be part of the environment and the culture. Yeah, just my opinion.
I could not agree with you more. And I can lend to you all a personal experience as a former classroom teacher myself. I taught students with emotional behavior disorders on the city's west side. So in my classroom, the demographics were like this. Everybody was African American. I had 15 boys, 1 girl. I taught English, science, math, and social studies to all of the kids. They didn't travel. They traveled to gym and they traveled to art, and that was it. Then they were back with me. And we also had what's called homeroom. And so for homeroom, I would have a class of kids, and they were always the incorrigibles in the building. But I'll tell you what, those kids knew that I was not going to be a fly by night. I would go to their homes, have conversations with their parents, call their parents when things were going good, things not going so well. So the kid knows that you can't play one for the other. Like the parent is on board with what we're doing at the school level. And not only that they're going to mirror some of the interventions that I'm using at the school level. I'm sharing it with your mom. So you're really listening to my voice when you go home too as well, because we're echoing the same sentiment. So it was pretty cool. But I had a kid who came to my homeroom, and I hadn't seen this kid in months. Like, she just disappeared. She's just tardy from school. She finally comes to school after about a month and a half. And I said, well, look what the cat drug in. I was like, how's life been treating you? And she said, not fair. And she starts to bawl. She's just crying there. And this was my first year teaching. So again, like you said, like, I know, like, there's certain things that I can and cannot do. Like, clearly this kid needed a hug, but I was so afraid to do that. So there was Kleenex like on my desk. And so I handed her the box of Kleenex, and that's pretty much all I did for her. And then I never saw that kid again. Never saw her again. I will never forget her name, because that is the day I had an epiphany to do whatever it took to meet every kid where he or she was. And when I decided to make that decision, my career blossomed. Like, I outgrew the classroom, and that's why I'm in the position I'm in. So I've been assistant principal. I was dean, then assistant principal, then network administrator. I've been principal. So I was able to like get out of my comfort zone and stop being afraid to stop the lesson, like you said, to like do what's necessary to meet kids where they are. But unfortunately, we have our teachers in such fear that if we don't, teach rigidly to the lessons, that, because there's a human side. Kids are not just clients, like they are human beings.
Yeah.
With feelings, and that social emotional learning has to happen before they're going to receive any type of instruction. They're not going to care about what you're saying if you don't do a check-in with them in the beginning and see how they're doing when they walk into your classroom. So that's the message that we try to push, to our teachers. And we do have a mentorship program, like in our inner city, especially with the African-American, Hispanic males, to be more targeted. But our mentors are at a premium, like they're spread thin.
Oh, I bet.
I would like to just piggyback on what you're saying. I guess we have something in common, because during my teaching career, I taught students with emotional and or behavior disorders for 10 years, had a self-contained classroom. And at that time, with social skills, that was not taught in isolation. That was used, teachable moments. Whenever a behavior or incident, we would problem solve. We would deal with conflict. We would give scenarios. What would you do? Right on the spot. So the social skills were taught right along with the instruction. And I guess what I'm hearing that today, with the standards, curriculum, and all, that we have really, really have lost some things that are really, really important that should be a part of everyday instruction, everyday curriculum, with students. So I just thought that I would just add that. And I know that
you're absolutely right.
We've lost our way.
Social emotional learning piece is going to be really, really critical when students go back.
And so that's the thing about special education, Priscilla. When you're a special education teacher, you actually are afforded. That's actually built into the package.
Correct. And I was just thinking that we practice it on a daily basis, which, for me, that's key, because if we're not able to reach them emotionally and make sure that they are comfortable within the social emotional aspect, you're not going to be able to reach them academically. So that's important for us. And we encourage, and I'm actually working on a report now of how we were able to reach our students during our distance learning period to impact, their social well-being, because we realized that while they were home, they didn't have as much socialization, and they had to deal with different aspects of not having that social engagement or things that are actually going on within their home or community. So we're trying to make sure that we don't lose our children because of any setbacks that they had emotionally, and they're able to come back and, have connections to teachers, paraprofessionals, and administrators. I work primarily with the behavioral aspect of our district. As one of the administrators, I work with the alternative schools and support programs for students who need social emotional support. So just making sure that children have those needs met through personal connections I think that's key. And having an adult that they can communicate with as well, not just their peers, but an adult who can empathize with them is important.
Yeah. So you deal with functional assessments.
Yes. Functional assessments.
Behavior intervention plans.
Observations of the behavior, just trying to figure out what's causing the behavior.
Awesome.
Yeah.
fun stuff. That was my
Yeah,
daughter's
lots of fun sometimes, and trying to get them connected to resources, mental health, as well as just day-to-day social, emotional instruction.
It's a heavy lift, but it is worth it.
It is
Yeah.
important. It's important work, and I'll be honest, it's not a day, when I'm working with students, that I don't feel the impact of it, but I also see the results of the work that we're doing, because we do the work. We're not just saying, hey, you need a program, or hey, you need to provide social skills. We have teachers who are trying to connect with these children, and they understand why they need to make that connection.
And there's follow through, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. It's a tough job. Somebody got to do it. But it's great that you're doing it, and your sleeves are rolled up every day. And God, I love you for that, because it is like not easy work. Like I did it for quite some time, and it's it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough,
Yeah.
but it's like you said, it is really important work, and it's meaningful. And one of the most beautiful things is when years later some student comes by all grown up
Right.
and says, hey, you know what, you made a difference for me. And it happens every now and then. It doesn't happen like every day or every week,
Right.
or maybe even not every year, but it happens, and it reminds us that this work is important and that we are making a difference. Because some days you go home and you're like, what good am I doing? But we are, and we have to remind ourselves of that. We're all doing well. It's 4:44, and so we really should end this meeting. On the other hand, the discussion has been so powerful that I almost hate to, but I imagine we have other places to go and do things to do. I mean, what do you all think?
Actually, I ran 15 minutes over. I should be on another call, so I'm gonna excuse
All
myself.
right. Okay, I do have a question though. I feel like I haven't been posting these videos, with the exception of the student name that you shared, Christy, a long time ago, which
Oh
I
yeah,
can
this was
delete
like
out.
yeah.
So it's not a problem?
Yeah.
Is everybody in the room okay with me posting this video? Like sharing it with the people who wanted to hear it, or would you prefer I not?
I don't have a problem with it. That's fine.
Okay, how about you, Tricilia?
I don't have a problem with it. I think that what we've discussed today is important.
That's how I'm feeling, but I also have been very sensitive. The first meeting I edited heavily and then posted it, but there's been a lot of discussion going on that I thought I'm not going to share that. But today I feel like what we've discussed is really important, and I would love to share this conversation.
If you can edit the kid's name just for
I can do that. I can do that.
Go for it. Go for it. This
All right.
is important work that we're
Yeah.
embarking upon, and we want the masses to know about it.
Right.
Don't want to hide anything.
Okay.
And Susan, I just want to thank you for the platform, allowing us to have this discussion.
You're welcome. It's what this is about. It's about connecting educators. It's about connecting people. That's the whole purpose.
Much appreciated. See you later, gang.
Thank you for coming. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.